Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Chris Finlayson.
Mr. Speaker, while this bill may be the last to receive a third reading today, it's not the least. It provides for 4 settlements, iwi who have historical treaty claims in Titauihu at the top of the south. Many people have sacrificed their time and well-being to achieve these settlements, but it's very, very sad indeed that Chris Ahutahi, who worked for the Tainui Taranaki Tite Tonga Collective, is not here to see this day. We attribute his work at the commencement of negotiations as getting us here today. The bill contains Crown acknowledgements and apologies made to each of these 4 iwi and provides for specific redress. Mr. Speaker, understanding the history is critical, and I endorse what Mr. Henare and others have said about the importance of history. I don't intend to repeat what he and Mr. Tirakatani and others have so eloquently said about the history of these settlements, and Mr. Tirakatani in particular has spoken so very well in this debate about these 4 iwi. I acknowledge their contribution, I endorse what they've said, but rather I want to make a few comments about each of the iwi represented here this morning. Ngati Koata. Ngati Koata descended from Koata of the Tainui Waka, and for many years were a coastal iwi residing in Kawhia. They came first to Titauihu through a tuku, or grant of land from a Kurahopo chief, and then went through the subsequent invasion. They principally established themselves at Rangitoto Island, Kwasel, Wakatu and Wakapuaka. They were a people with a close association to the coast, both in terms of navigation and fishing. In recognition of the importance of certain sites to Ngati Koata, including part of Rangitoto or D'Urville Island, this bill requires the New Zealand Conservation Authority to have particular regard to Ngati Koata's values when considering management plans for these sites. Through the bill, Ngati Koata will be appointed as a conservation statutory advisor over Takapurewa or Stevens Island. This island was traditionally used as a tauhanga training ground, as well as being a valuable source of natural resources. Being appointed as a conservation statutory advisor provides Ngati Koata the ability to give advice to the Minister of Conservation in relation to the restoration of native flora and the management of native fauna. Mr. Speaker, this settlement would not be happening today without the dedication of Roma Hippolyte, who led negotiations with the support of Alan Hippolyte. Api Hemi united Ngati Koata, and previous chairs and original claimants Jim Elkington and Priscilla Paul guided Ngati Koata through the hearings, along with Pene Ruruku, Puhanga Tupaia, Naro Tupaia, and the late Martin Dawson. Let me say something about the late Martin Dawson. I'm sure Shane Jones would endorse this. Martin Dawson was a lawyer in Wellington for many years. He acted for iwi long before it became the fashionable or popular thing to do. He was interested in these issues because he was a caring lawyer dedicated to justice, not because he was interested in the 6-minute units or fees. And without, of course, descending into personalities, that would be inappropriate. I simply say he could teach some lawyers a thing or two about professionalism. We greatly miss him for the work that he did on this and other settlements. May he rest in peace. I want to say something about Ngati Rarua. They originated from the western coast of the King Country region and descend from those tupuna who migrated to New Zealand aboard the Tainui Waka. The lands at Motueka, Riwaka and Mariho became a significant area of occupation for Ngati Rarua in Titauihu, as did the Wairau district on the east coast and areas of Golden Bay and the upper west coast. Despite being settled in Wairau, Ngati Rarua were not party to the negotiations which led to the Wairau purchase. The reserves provided for Ngati Rarua under the Te Waiponamu purchase only had a very small area of cultivable land. They were isolated, they were of poor quality. In recognition of the significance of certain sites to Ngati Rarua, this bill requires the New Zealand Conservation Authority to have particular regard to Ngati Rarua's values when considering management plans in relation to these sites. Mr. Speaker, I particularly want to acknowledge Barry Mason. He was the inaugural Trust Chair and a founding member of the committee that filed the Ngati Rarua claim, along with Molly Luke, who's been a complete stalwart at the helm as Chair until very recently. I also acknowledge Lee Luke and also my old sparring partner Tim Castle, who were the principal negotiators for Ngati Rarua. I'm very kind to the lawyers today. Then there's Ngati Tama ki te Teho Ihu. They trace their roots to the Tokumaru Waka from Hawaii. They take their name from Tamariki, who came aboard that vessel. The Ngati Tama ki te Tauihu Rangatira, Te Puoho, led their migration. He also led the last known taua by northern iwi into the Ngaitahu territory in 1836 and was killed doing so. Ngati Tama established themselves as tangata whenua in Titauihu with pā at numerous locations, including Titaitapu, Wainui, Takaka and Parapara in Golden Bay, and also at various places like Wakapuaka in Tasman Bay. I think, without casting aspersions at all on other iwi, I do think they have the best sites in the land. Ngati Tama ki te Tauihu negotiators have consistently tried to re-establish their connections with their traditional sites, and so one aspect of their settlement which is very important is Te Korowai Mana, which acknowledges the traditional, cultural, spiritual and historical association of Ngati Tama ki te Tauihu with certain sites of significance. Mr. Speaker, can I acknowledge Janice Mason, the inaugural chair, and Kerry Stevens, another previous chair for Ngati Tama. I particularly pay tribute today to that great warrior, Fred Tamiha. I am so very fond of Fred. He says what he thinks, and he thinks a lot. And he is going to be a force for this great iwi in the future. I also acknowledge Rob McEwen and Joe Westrup and John Ward Holmes. Then, Mr. Speaker, there's Te Atiawa o te Waka Maui, and I do want to say some things about that great iwi situated near Anakiwa. By the 1830s, Te Atiawa was settled through Te Taranui, Queen Charlotte Sound. They also established themselves in Tasman Bay, Golden Bay and Te Taitapu. The Tasman Sea, Pacific Ocean and the Cook Strait were great highways for them. By geographical choice and necessity, they were coastal dwellers, and they continue to place high cultural and historical values on the foreshore, the seabed and the coastal and maritime waterways. Through this bill, they are appointed as statutory kaitiaki over 5 islands in Queen Charlotte Sound, and this will provide them with the opportunity to provide advice in relation to the restoration of native flora and management of native fauna. There are so many people who have led the charge for Te Atiawa. The Reverend Hari Ruru and Sharon Gamble particularly deserve a special mention. I wish Glenys Payne and the Trust all the best as it leads this wonderful iwi into a post-settlement era. Let me just simply say one thing about the post-settlement era. We have heard this morning, as we hear with all third readings, some wonderful sentiments being expressed, but the bipartisan view that comes from the Labour Party and the National Party needs to be emphasised, that for all the great phrases, it's what will make these settlements succeed in the future will be the Crown living up to its obligations. And I'm acutely conscious of that, and that's why we have set up a post-settlement commitments unit to make sure that the Crown holds fast to its promises, not just tomorrow, not just in 25 years, but forever after. So, Mr. Speaker, I congratulate these iwi for achieving this moment. I thank you for the work that you've done over so many years, and with goodwill on both sides and with the Crown doing its bit, I believe it's the start of a renewed relationship with the Crown, one that will be based on trust, cooperation and respect for the treaty. Mr. Speaker, the third reading of the Ngati Koata, Ngati Rarua, Ngati Tama ki te Tauihu and te Atiawa o te Waka a Maui Claim Settlement Bill marks the end for Parliament of what is a momentous day, of course, not just for Parliament but for the iwi. I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party.
14 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Maori Party.
Tokotoru e tautoko ana.
Mana.
1 vote in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
Brendan Horan.
The ayes are 113, the noes are 7. The motion is agreed to.
Ngati Koata. Ngati Rarua. Ngati Tama ki te Tauihu. Te Atiawa te Waka a Maui Claim Settlement Bill, third reading.
Now, permission has been granted for a waiata from the whānau in the gallery. Now's the appropriate time if they wish to do that. thank members. The House will stand adjourned until 2 p.m. today.